Hi, my name is Shefali. I'm a biologist by training. I currently work at a biological field station, and I'm also an aspiring mental health counselor. That's currently what I'm studying on the side and hoping to transition to over the next couple of years. In particular, I am interested in this intersection between ecological grief and mental health. And so, yeah, I think as a function of my career and my interests, I do spend a lot of time both experiencing ecological grief as well as enacting ways to cope with it. Um, what I don't spend a lot of time on is articulating to myself or others this sort of profound and ongoing sense of grief. I think that's actually a really good place to start, right? One of the consequences of experiencing something that has such a vast scope and is so, intangible, almost ineffable, is that it is hard to put a label on these very big feelings. And it is subsequently hard to have conversations with the people in your life about them. And I would say that is true even within this field of ecology. And that subject matter expertise can sometimes even be a barrier in engaging with others because there is this recognition that this is something we all experience and are coping with in different ways. But there's also an underlying feeling of insecurity, because the people that you respect and that you work with are contributing by producing meaningful scholarship and dialogue and action. They are contributing to science, to research, to conservation, to advocacy and outreach. Whatever form their passion and activism takes, you necessarily do feel, as with any big problem, that this is, so far out of your scope to engage in effectively that anything that you do is inadequate. Um, yeah, and so you can be left with these feelings of unarticulated helplessness that are real and powerful, and can be paralyzing. You know, as a teenager, I had this strong feeling that I wanted to help save the planet in some capacity, and that there were all of these approaches that I could take in order to do so. But none of them quite seemed to be enough, or, many of them even seemed to be like putting a band-aid on a dislocated limb. Um, and what has helped me with these feelings of, hopelessness as I've gotten older and hopefully wiser, um, is this recognition of scales of impact, and that the scale at which I want to operate or tell myself that I should operate at, is not necessarily the scale that is functional for me to operate at. Um, so what I really mean by this is, coming to terms with the scale of a problem or a challenge or a goal that you could potentially dedicate your life towards, but also the recognition of what your capacities are and where you have the most impact and where your talents lie, and how these can change in scope over time. Some people and organizations are very good at big picture thinking, at, advocating for systemic change or ecosystemic preservation. And it can be very tempting to want to be one of those people and measure yourself up to them, or to work in these organizations that have massive impact. But I think it's important to come at it with a realistic perspective. And one of the perspectives that has helped me the most is to think about myself as a cog in the machine and, evaluate whether this machine is headed in a direction that my values can align with and how I can be the most effective cog that I can. Um, Whether the machine is, an organization, a family, society at large, or even just myself. Um, you know, and so for me personally, I find that I do work better at scales of communities. I have skills that lend themselves to facilitating and organizing publics, to rally and motivate people. I have learned that I do some of my best work one-on-one. And so in, transitioning to this field of mental health, I am effectively downscaling. I'm not doing work that is visible on an ecosystem level. I am doing, maybe something to catalyze change in people that might then go on to have a larger impact at various scales. And that is where my capacity to heal lies. And yeah, I think it is important to not lose sight of yourself, of these sort of everyday tasks of being alive, of being a human in this world, your ability and right to find joy for yourself in the things that you can control, the sort of right to the pursuit of happiness, as it were. Um, a lot of people, including myself, at various points in my life, um, believe that this guilt must be necessarily all consuming, that because there is so much suffering in the world at large, because there's ongoing chronic loss and upheaval and declines along all of these dimensions and so many ecosystems, that we must all bear witness and carry this burden with us and remember it constantly. But I actually think that can be quite damaging and again, paralyzing. I think it has to be one of those put your own oxygen mask before you can plug the ozone layer in the atmosphere kind of attitudes. I think ultimately it is important to have fulfilling, nourishing aspects of your life that are not necessarily tied to the role that you can play to mitigate these tragedies. Yeah, it's important to remember that you can choose to contribute where and when and how you can and are able to in a moment, and that these contributions can and maybe even ought to change over time and over the course of your life. Yeah. So, it means if you're out here working a job that you feel does not contribute to the good of society and the planet as a whole, but that's all you can get in the moment and it pays the bills and keeps the roof over your head, and that is fine. And that is what you need to do. If you need to stockpile strength and resources for yourself, that's okay. If you need to turn blinkers on and stop doom scrolling for your sanity, that's okay. None of these choices have to be permanent. Maybe that's all you have the capacity to do this month, this year, is to sign a petition to make a small donation to an organization you believe in. And that's perfectly valid. You're contributing to a cause. Maybe next year you will show up with your body at a beach cleaning event. Maybe a few years from now, you will go back to school to reckon with the concepts that you didn't have the energy for, or to get into a career that aligns more with your ethics. And maybe a decade from now, you'll have enough resources and clarity to make a bigger donation to a cause that you believe in, or do pro bono work for some grassroots initiative. Whatever it is, whatever the ways in which you are contributing, do not diminish the value of these efforts. Even if it is just keeping yourself safe and healthy, it matters that you are showing up for yourself. It's okay if you don't save the world. It's okay if you just save one person, and that one person is you. Um, yeah, I think you can have faith that if you live to fight another day, maybe another day your response will be different. And that is a powerful thing to have faith in, and your ability to build connection and capacity and resources and resilience. So yeah, that is my big takeaway from this exercise, that when you are feeling overwhelmed, um, you are operating at a scale that is incongruent to your capacities and well-being. And it might be true that you are nothing at the scale of the universe. You are in fact everything at the scale of yourself. And you can create varying levels of impact in between these two extremes by constantly reevaluating and negotiating and making peace with the ways in which you engage with the world. Thanks.